Step one in our food recall is to get a simple list or a quick list of all the foods and drinks consumed in a 24-hour period. First thing you have to decide is, when does the 24-hour time frame begin and end? You can use a couple of different methods to determine that 24-hour time period. Pick the one that works best for you and your participant. For example, look at yesterday and record everything they ate in a 24-hour period. Now, for some participants, it may be easier to start from when you meet with them and go back 24 hours. There's no particular order to this list. It is simply a list. So whatever method they want to use to go from point A to point B will be fine, and they will use different strategies to remember what they had to eat and what they had to drink. It doesn't have to be in chronological order. It simply needs to be recalled. Once you've decided what time period to use, it's time to start the quick list. A few things to remember. It's a quick list. Don't worry about details now. You'll get those in a later step. Throughout the recall, if some of the participants jump ahead, ask them to rejoin the group on the current step. And remember, they can recall the food in whatever order comes easiest to them.
I need to ask you a few questions about, I want to ask you, and I need to know this, what you ate or drank yesterday. And we have a 5-step program that I'll walk you through, and it'll help you remember what you ate or drank. Okay, and our first one is the quick list. I need you to tell me everything you ate or drank yesterday.
I had cereal.
Okay.
And orange juice.
Okay.
And then we had chicken.
Okay.
Green beans.
Okay.
And carrots. And then sweet tea.
In a group setting, the quick list will look more like this.
Okay, now what we would like to do is known as the quick list. What I would like you to remember is each food that you will think of gets its own line, so only one food per line, okay? Be thinking about the past 24 hours, everything that you've had to eat or drink, and I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. It doesn't have to have any particular order, just a simple list.
There's no pressure to be exact or give specifics here.
Just ask them to name everything that they ate in a whole complete day. It doesn't have to be in any particular order.
The important thing to remember in this step is to make sure that you cover the full 24-hour period and allow the participants to remember the foods in any order. This is a good time to get them in the habit of writing one food item per line. That will become important when they start filling in more details a little later. Now feel free to refer to the facilitator's guide for more information on the quick list. Coming up next is Forgotten Foods and Time and Occasion, tools that will help participants add to their food recall. In this segment, we're going to cover steps 2 and 3. Step 2 is Forgotten Foods and is used to help participants remember additional foods. Step 3 is called Time and Occasion and is used to identify the time of day foods were consumed and to help participants remember additional foods as they think about their activities. Both steps are used to help participants think back over the last 24 hours and remember foods they may have forgotten. Once you finish the quick list, pull out your list of forgotten foods. We found that there are certain foods that participants leave out when they first go through the quick list.
There are certain foods that people tend to forget that they've eaten. So I'm going to read off the list, and you can tell me if you had some of these foods.
Okay.
Did you have any crackers, breads? Did you have any chips, any candy, nuts or seeds?
I did have some peanuts.
Okay.
You may need to take some time with this step and let participants jog their memories.
So I'm going to be reading slowly through a list of foods, and if there's something that you happen to remember as I'm reading them, whether it's on this list or not, please go ahead and write it down. Okay, remember, each food gets its own line. Did you remember eating any crackers, breads, rolls, or tortillas? What about anything to drink such as beer, wine, cocktails, brandies, wine coolers, or any other drinks made with liquor that you might have forgotten? Record any of the food items or drinks as they are remembered.
The quick list grows longer when the participants hear the items on the forgotten foods list.
Mostly the crackers that they may have had on the side of their bedstand, because many, again, they're taking medication, and sometimes they have to wake up at night and take medication, and it says put something on your stomach.
And as always, you need to be sensitive to the feelings of the participants.
And sometimes they're afraid to list everything, and we try to let them know that we're not being judgmental about this. This is for your benefit.
Step 3 is called time and occasion. It's another way we can help participants continue to fill out their recall forms. You focus on the time of day they may have eaten and the activities they were involved in during the day.
Step 3 is something we call time and occasion. This is where we think about the activities maybe that you've done in the past 24 hours.
Like if you're driving in the car, you probably want something to drink. I like to have something to drink in the car. You're sitting at home looking at TV, you're used to go munch on popcorn, or it may be even a drink or chips. And so those are things, those are things that you need to ask too.
If you have children, maybe you went to some of your children's activities. Did you maybe go to a concession stand? Or you're waiting somewhere where there was a vending machine?
Playing computer games or just working at the computer usually means time for a snack. There are always some things to look for that aren't on the list, such as the little tastes and bites that people do while they're cooking or cleaning up after a meal.
So that's what did you do in the tasting? Oh, yeah, I did. I tasted. I said, well, about how much did you taste? Well, I know I did about 3 tablespoons of the green beans, and I tasted the corn to see if it was sweet enough. You know, they don't think about stuff, but they'll tell you what they did.
Give them plenty of time to think through their day and any activities that were associated with food. Then when they're done, it's time to start putting meal codes with the food. Depending on what system you use for data entry, you may be required to have a meal code. The meal code helps identify the times when the foods were eaten. These codes are another way of helping us track the behavior change of our participants. When they first enroll in the program, they may only be eating 1 meal a day. We hope to see this improve, but we can only tell if we gather this key piece of information.
Now, on your food recall form, you'll notice a place on the right-hand side that says meal type. If you'll all locate that. For each one of the foods, we would like for you to write down what time of the day did you actually do that. If you'll notice back up here at section 8, it says meal or snack type. It's divided into number 1, morning, number 2, mid-morning, number 3, noon, and so on.
In this segment, we learned about step 2, forgotten foods. That's the list of foods that we found participants most commonly forget to include on their quick list. In step 3, time and occasion, we gave the participants another way to jog their memories for foods they may have forgotten to include. Research shows that thinking of activities can help trigger memories of foods eaten during those activities. Finally, meal codes are important because they help us track the behavior choices made by the participants. Check the facilitator's guide for more information on forgotten foods and time and occasion. Coming up next is step 4, food details. That's when we'll work with participants to gather all the details that will give us the most accurate food recall possible. Let's go over what we've covered so far. Step 1 was the quick list, a random list of everything the participant consumed in a 24-hour period. Step 2, forgotten foods, reminding them using a list of commonly forgotten foods. And step 3, time and occasion, thinking back over activities they took part in and if food was involved. They also identify the time of day the food was consumed. Now we're ready for step 4, which has 2 parts. First is food details, which we'll begin talking about in this segment. The second part of step 4 is estimating portion size. We'll cover that in the next segment. Now for the food details. We're going to get much more specific about each of the items on the food recall form. For example, how would they describe the food? How was it prepared? How was it served? The way you ask the questions here is very important. The key thing is not to suggest a possible answer.
An example would be if you had a participant who had a salad, you would not want to say something along the lines of, oh, you probably didn't have more than 1 or 2 tablespoons of salad dressing with that salad. Or if they had a glass of milk, say, oh, you had 8 ounces, didn't you? Or, was it about 8 ounces?
These are called leading questions. And the danger is that the participant may think that you're telling them what they should have done or how you want them to answer.
When you ask a question in that manner, you run the risk of influencing the participant's answer. Because they hear it come from the NEA's mouth, they might get the idea that that's what we're looking for, and they can potentially skew their food recall because of it.
Instead, concentrate on open-ended questions, those starting with words like how, what, when, and where.
And I'll ask them, well, how did you prepare your food? What did you do to your meat?
Where did you eat the food at? Did you make this at home?
People prepare and eat the variety of foods that they do for many different reasons. It may be preference, it may be tradition, or it may be family budget. Whichever the reason, they need to be able to be comfortable in reporting what they have done. Now let's talk about what kinds of details you should be looking for. You need descriptions about the foods that they've consumed. For example, they may have put chicken on their quick list, but was it grilled, fried, or did they have chicken nuggets? Other details you should ask. Was it made at home? Did they eat at a restaurant? And if so, what did they order? Was it a name brand item? Did they add things like butter, sauces, gravy, or any condiments? Also look out for mixed dishes. That would be something like a casserole, a sandwich, or salad. Maybe they had chili. Did it have hamburger in it? What about beans? Make sure you ask how the mixed dish was prepared and how it was served. Now let's take a look at more examples on capturing food details.
Because we're doing the detail cycle now. And people prepare foods in many different ways, so I need to know how you prepared your food. Your cereal, was it hot or cold?
It was cold.
And
It was honeycombs.
Okay, now we're going to begin putting in the details. If you'll notice, the cereal that we had originally put down on our quick list now has the detail of the Honey Nut Cheerios. The coffee, they added creamer and sugar. The toast, what kind of toast was it? It was homemade raisin bread.
Was the food a name brand? If so, list the brand.
Details that I really look for is if they went to a McDonald's.
This particular candy bar was Hershey's. Not only was it Hershey's chocolate, but it also had almonds in it.
Did the participant eat at a restaurant? Was it a fast food outlet?
If you ate out somewhere, can you list that specific place where you ate? Because, one burger at one place is not necessarily the same burger at another place.
Describe the different variations of food. For example, was it low fat, whole grain?
Milk is one of the main phases that usually they'll just say milk, and you have to really question them as to 2% whole milk. Breads is another one. A lot of them will say wheat bread, and then you have to have a discussion with them to determine whether it was a whole wheat bread or a so-called wheat bread.
Ask them, how was the food prepared?
We need to know exactly how the food was prepared, whether it was baked, whether it was fried. Did you add breading to it?
And I'll ask them, well, how did you prepare your food? What did you do to your meat? Well, I just cooked it in the oven. Okay, you cooked it in the oven. Did you bake it, or did you just add water to it, or did you just... Oh, no, I added cream mushroom soup, and I added some potatoes.
To get the most accurate results from a 24-hour food recall, it's important to know exactly how the food was served. This is where we're going to look for what, if any, additional foods might have been added when that service came to be. So if you had mashed potatoes, for example, What, if anything, went with them?
I think the details that are most often overlooked are the things that people add to their food unconsciously. It's just something that they're used to doing. And then when they go back and are doing the recall, they're thinking of the food as a whole or the meal as a whole. So they're not thinking that, oh, yes, I added sugar to that tea, or I added butter to that corn.
Did you have the tomato on there or the lettuce? Did you have mayo or mustard? Things that they've added to the sandwich is one of the small details that I always have to ask them about.
Some of the frozen fruits and vegetables can have sugar or butter or something else added to it. So you always want to ask.
The little things that they add along the way that I don't think people often tend to remember. And again, when you're counting calories or you're watching calories or trying to lose weight, or that may be your goal or something along those lines, those things can add up quickly.
When the participants eat meat, find out if it was with or without skin and with or without the bone.
And then your chicken, how did you fix your chicken?
I put it in the oven to bake.
Okay. Was it breaded?
No, just with the skin.
Had skin on?
Make sure they include as many ingredients as possible for a mixed dish.
A lot of times they'll make like a casserole, and then they add different items like, well, I had hamburger meat and I had macaroni.
This group.
Remember, all the information you can gather here will make a difference in the accuracy of the food recall.
And we will be.
When it comes down to the details, it can make a difference in your calories or your grams of fat. And so we want to be able to capture those details so we can get the most accurate recall possible.
Let's briefly review step 4, food details. First, remember that how you ask questions here will make a difference. Don't ask leading questions that could influence the way the participant might answer the question. Instead, ask open-ended questions beginning with words such as how, what, when, and where. The more details they give about the foods they've eaten, the more thorough the food recall will be. Now would be a good time to check your facilitator's guide for more information about food details. Next, we're going to look at the rest of step 4, which talks about portion size. The first part of step 4 was food details. Now we'll continue with step 4 with estimating portion sizes. First, a quick review. What is a portion size? It's how much they actually consumed. That's what we're looking for.
In my opinion, the details that are the most difficult to capture are the portion size. I think people have a hard time visualizing what they ate or taking what they consumed, what they ate, and putting it into a size.
They don't have to rely on their memory to guess how much they had to eat. That's where the food recall kit comes in. Using the visual aids in the kit will greatly enhance your ability to get an accurate food recall.
Okay, Brenda, that was the part of the fifth detail cycle is estimating how much you ate. And these visuals here, they're going to help us determine to an accurate point, pretty accurate how much you ate.
Okay.
So if you take a look at these and then determine which one you think come more closer to what you had.
Okay, here's the cereal bowl that you had asked for earlier. I'm not real for sure, but I'm thinking it'd probably be more about like right there.
Okay.
Visual aids help people estimate their portion size. It actually helps if they can pick up and handle the visual aid. That's why we have the food recall kits. There's a variety of visuals available to help estimate portion size. First, let's look at visuals for liquids. Because people eat in different places and they use different kinds of containers, it's useful if you can have in your kit examples of the types of containers that they're going to find in those situations. For example, over here we have examples of the kinds of containers that people would use at home. These on this side are examples of containers that they would use if they were at a fast food restaurant or at a convenience store and they were filling their own cup. And then finally in the center, we have examples of the kinds of products and the types and sizes of containers that they get if they actually went in and bought the product already in the container itself. The next group are amorphous foods, and that's a word you may not know. It simply means that these are foods that either mound, or you would scoop out of a container, or that you would pour into a bowl. They don't really have a shape on their own. They're going to take on the shape of what they're sitting with. So let's look at how you can possibly estimate those. For a lot of foods that would be served in a bowl, like cereal or oatmeal, you can ask them, have a variety of sizes of bowls, and ask them to pick the bowl that most closely represents the one they have at home. And then using bean bags that are actually filled with beans that you know the quantity of, put a variety of sizes or amounts of these. It may be that they need 2 of them to say this looks like the amount that I had, and then you can get a good idea of how much they actually ate. There are other tools as well. Many times these are folks that don't do a lot of cooking themselves, or maybe don't have official measuring cups and measuring spoons, so that those types of tools aren't especially useful to them. But if you have them handy, you may even be able to put those in the bowl and get some information from them that way. Also, we have food models in some kits, and those can help give people a good idea. Again, remember that you may need to combine the number of them, or have them visually divided in half, so that the amount that they ate looked more like this than just one on its own. The rest of the foods fall under a wide grouping we call known amounts. These are things that really we don't measure per se. They're things like an egg or an apple or a piece of fruit. Now, under serving size, what they'll tell you is a piece of fruit is the size of a tennis ball, but that's not necessarily the known amount that the individual that you're talking with and working with is going to be using. Their known amount for that same apple may be much larger, or it may actually be smaller than this, and that's going to go across the board on many kinds of foods. It may be a slice of bread, and to you this may be the slice of bread the size that you use, but for someone else that slice of bread may be thicker, it may be wider, it may be taller. So it's really important to work with the individual so that they understand and you can record exactly the size of the product that they actually ate. The same goes with bagels. You can see that we have standard bagels, and this is what I would call a bagel, either one, but they're quite a bit different in size, and so it becomes important to have an additional visual aid, which might be something like a ruler, so that they can measure the food and find out how big it actually is. Same thing, if you've got a visual aid of something like a brownie or a piece of pie, well, that ruler can be a very useful tool in helping determine exactly how much brownie they ate, as opposed to what the serving size of that brownie might be. NEAs have had lots of experience helping participants estimate portion sizes. One trick is to use your hand.
Tell me what kind of meat you had to eat. Well, I had a pork chop. Well, how big was this pork chop? I don't know. I said, okay, take your hand out. They look at the hand. And I said, now I want you to cut your fingers off. They look at me. I said, okay, now tell me, was that pork chop as big as your hand? Yeah. I said, okay, we call it 3 ounces.
Participant Sarah White used her hand to measure soup.
In the food recall, she asked her, what'd you eat? And the first time, my first food recall, it was the night before we had made a vegetable soup. She said, okay, what did you put in it? How much did you put in it? And I measure everything I put in it, but I don't measure how much I take back. And she's like, well, is it the size of your fist? Is it 2 fists? And is the size of your fist is about a cup. And I was like, okay, well, I had about 2 cups of soup.
That's an example of a technique you can use either in a group setting or one-to-one, but there are differences in how you handle each situation.
When the NEA is in the participant's home, they have the luxury of being able to ask that participant to maybe go get that particular plate or that particular bowl. So if a participant said, I had a bowl of cereal this morning, I can't remember if it was a cup or a half cup, the NEA has the ability to sit there and say, well, do you have that bowl handy? Can I take a look at it?
The visuals are even more important in a group setting where the participants can't simply grab the same cup or bowl they used earlier.
We have some tools here that you might be able to use, like say with your soup that you were needing to estimate, you might want to use the measuring cups and try to figure out which one of those is closest to the amount that you had, and then maybe how many of those.
I think I had 2 of these in that bowl.
Okay, and this is about a cup, so 2 cups then. Okay, great.
I think I've had about 2 of these of meat.
Okay, and so that would be about 6 ounces. So if you'd like to write that down. Do you have any other things that you need to estimate?
No, that's all.
Okay, great.
Another hint, with a group, stay on the same types of food at the same time.
For example, if the NEA can have them all fill out their same types of food at the same time, liquids, she can hold up liquid measurements, whole units of food, pieces of pizza, or foods along that line, she can show different sizes to the group. So as they go along together, they can fill out those measurements and get the most accurate responses possible.
Let's review the last part of step 4, estimating portion size. You're looking for the amount of food and drink consumed by the participant. Have your food recall kit ready to help them determine the amounts of food they had. And in your group sessions, the goal is to have everyone working on the same food group at the same time. Take some time to get familiar with the visuals in the food recall kit. Next is the final probe, our 5th step. Now we're down to step 5, the final probe. This is where participants take one more look at their recall form, just in case they've forgotten something.
Okay, Brenda, I want you to look over this list and see if you've forgotten anything or not.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're now to the final step, step 5. It's called the final probe. Go back over your list. Are there any foods that maybe you've forgotten to put down that you've remembered? Now's a good time to go ahead and put those on there. Once you've finished with that, I'd like for you to go back up to the top where the name and the date and all that information is on section 1 through 8. Make sure all of those blanks are filled in.
This is the time to make sure the recall forms are as complete as possible. Make sure that everything's filled in correctly.
Also, you lose accuracy with it. If you don't capture the details right then in the moment, then you have to go back and you're relying either on the participant's memory to fill in the blanks or the NEA's memory to fill in the blanks. And then you run the risk of losing your accuracy of your food recall.
In a group session, this would be a good time to walk around the room, maybe looking over shoulders to make sure they understand and that they're filling out the form as completely as possible.
And when you're finished, I'll take those up. So next week when you return, we'll be able to have your final printout for you that will tell you all the nutritional information so that we can actually sit down and set your goals.
And that concludes the 5 steps of the 24-hour food recall. You can use the facilitator's guide for more information about the final probe. Coming up in our last segment, we'll talk about how to use the results to set goals for the individual participants. And then we'll talk about how to enter data of the food recall forms. So what happens next after you've completed the 5 steps of the 24-hour food recall? The information on the forms will be compiled and the